Okay, I think we have a good amount of people. I am going to go ahead and get started. Can you all see my screen and hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So welcome everyone. My name is Liz Brunette, for those of you who don't know me. Um, Today we are going to discuss Generate 5.2. As most of you know, if any of you that don't, this is really a time for us to dive into specific questions, give you kind of an update on where 5.2, what we've released in 5.2, if there's anything specific that you need to know about. We also provide an update on 5.3, and then open it up to you all for questions, comments, concerns, etc. Feel free to throw anything in the chat, or you can unmute yourselves and ask questions while Johnny is going through things. But welcome. Okay, so for today, like I said, we will review the changes in 5.2. You'll get a quick preview of 5.3 and be able to ask any questions. We will review our release calendar, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Additionally, as you all know, we really appreciate your feedback on the survey. I think we have included, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've also included a QR code this time around. So that once we get to that slide, there's a QR code and a link that you can click on. Again, we really appreciate your feedback, and it helps us kind of tweak these sessions as need be. Okay, Johnny, I'll let you take over. You're muted, Johnny.
Sorry, perfect way to start my first presentation of the year. Happy New Year. Welcome, everybody. I am an ETL developer, implementation, I don't know about specialist, work with states implementing ETL. So I'm going to go through the Generate 5.2 changes, and then we'll do a preview of 5.3. We did have in some of the previous feedback from the previous surveys that you would like a little more detail on the changes that actually went in for this release, because we were kind of doing a really high-level summary. So we added a little more to the slide for those of you that are going to get the slide deck afterwards and use it maybe to share with your staff. And then I'm going to go into a little more detail as well. So if you would, when you do the survey at the end, let us know. And, if this is too much, too little, we'll try to hit the sweet spot. So for 5.2, most of the changes were around the files that are due at the beginning of the year, and I know the dates have changed. So most of the changes were for the directory files, grades offered. We also had some changes in there for child count and discipline. So for directory specifically, as we were going through our internal testing, we found an issue with closed schools and reconstituted status and charter status and resolved that. As we were going through our internal testing as well, we found an issue with the prior ID passing through and being populated into the report. So, and it worked with the previous version, but we modified it in the last release to use the new staging to RDS. So for that, we actually modified the staging table and renamed that field to make it a little more obvious what that field is for, and then modified the migration process so the prior ID values now work for the LEA and the school in the new staging to RDS code. And then we found as we were going through the testing, there was an issue with for a very, very unique circumstance that we found with our test data. There was an instance where one of the joins would actually pull two records from like the school table or the LEA table. So we had to tighten up the date handling to make sure that it chose the appropriate organization. So we resolved that in this one. And then we just worked on like the report creation process taking a little longer than we would have liked. So we worked on that, worked on the joins, And that is now considerably faster. So the report creation process is faster for directory as well. And then for child count and discipline, it's the same change. So I'll just do them as one. With the new staging to RDS code, we modified how if you get multiple records, multiple race records for the same student, either multiple from the same school, multiple from the LEA in the school, multiple from two different schools, however they come in, we modified the handling of that because it was creating duplicates at the RDS level, which the report was then handling, but it was causing it to take longer. And if you were doing debugging, then you would see multiple records in the RDS. So we resolved all of that for child count and discipline. In the next release, we're going to have the same change go in for exiting as well. We just didn't get it in time for 5.2.
Johnny,
then
real
for
quick, there's a
yeah,
question from Raya.
yeah,
She said, is this the prior LEA ID on the school file?
yes, yes,
Thanks, Johnny.
no problem. And I apologize because I can't watch the chat at the same time that I'm presenting. I am just not that coordinated. So thank you, Liz, for pointing that out. And then for
Johnny?
39 for grades offered,
Johnny,
we
I think
just,
someone else has a question. I don't know who.
okay,
It's Lisa Keeter from
Hey, Lisa.
Kentucky.
sure.
When will, I just went out and pulled down the checklist for directory to see if these changes are integrated. And the last change that's documented was March of 2022. So when will we know, like this new field that's there in staging, how do we know what to populate in it and what we're putting in it? Lisa?
It's actually not a new field. We just renamed it. But we should have the checklist changes coming out very soon as well. But it's the same field that was there previously, but I think the way it was named, at least the way we were looking at it, it wasn't as intuitive as it should be. What should go into that field and what that field is for and how it relates to the final EdFacts file, the submission file, and what we're presenting in the UI. So we actually just changed the name of the field. And it's the prior ID for the LEA and the prior ID for the school. But we should have the checklist changes coming soon as well.
Oh, okay.
Can you give us an example of why would you have a prior ID? Because are you talking about if it's moved? I mean, why would there be a prior ID versus the current? What's the difference between prior ID and the LEA ID, I guess is what I'm saying.
Now you're getting into specifics for the EdFacts file itself. I honestly can't think of a circumstance where you would use prior ID, but it is part of the file specification. So
Okay.
Johnny, I can help with that if you want.
that would be great. Yeah.
So in Maine, at one point, we changed our ID system. So we moved to a total different ID system for IDing our schools and LEAs. So we stopped using the LEA ID and the school ID that we had been using. Some of them were consolidated IDs where we took the LEA and the school ID and we put it together. Anyway, it was a convoluted system. And when we moved to our new database system, we got all new IDs for our schools. It was a very painful process for our schools and districts, and they hated it. But it was, and I vowed that we would not do it again while I was there. So they're free to do it now that I'm not there anymore. But so we stopped using that. And we've actually been talking with another state where they have a specific set of IDs that they use only for federal reporting. And they want to stop using them and use their internal IDs that they're using. So there can be times where you want to change your ID system, and this is how you would do it.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
And Lisa, June just put something in the chat as well. Thanks, June. Raya, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I do have a quick question for Johnny. You said rename the field. Does that mean that you renamed the field in the staging table?
Yes, in the staging table itself.
Okay, that's going to be a change on our end.
Yeah, it's in K-12 organization.
organization.
Yeah.
All right, I just have to, yeah, I caught that and it's like, okay, it's a change. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I don't want to jump ahead.
There's nothing in the chat. I think you're good.
Okay. So I think we're at grades offered. So for grades offered, again, we modified in the last release, we went to the staging to RDS code for all of the organization data. So we found a join issue that was causing some duplication at the RDS level and resolved that for grades offered. And then just general ticket support. We refined the staging to RDS joins for K-12 schools, the population of K-12 schools, DIM LEAs, DIM SEAs, to make that more efficient, faster, cleaner. And then there's a few other tickets in there that were really minor, so I didn't want to list them in the slide, or the slide would get ridiculously small. And then the other two big things, general, not file specific, were we upgraded .NET Core from 3.1 to 6.0. .NET Core 3.1 actually was end of life, so they were ending support for that. We had to do that one. And then the big one, which big one for me anyway, sorry, is we added a new staging validation process. So, and it's documented in the release notes. There's a link to a document that goes into a lot more detail for that. But basically what it is, it's a standalone process that you can run if you want to. It is not integrated into a migration. So you can choose to run it at the end of, whatever migration you're running. But really quickly, what it does is we have a core set of rules that rolled out with this initial release, and it does some very basic checks, and then it does some a little more complex checks. It does basic checks like, did this table populate, right? Because if the K-12 organization table didn't populate, that's obviously going to be an issue going forward. There's no reason to continue to run the migration. And then there's more complex rules in there, like if you're doing an IDEA file, say you're working on child count, and if you loaded a student that you identified as an IDEA student, but did not provide a primary disability type. So it has checks like that in it as well. There's a core set of checks that rolled out with 5.2, or that are rolling out with 5.2. And then with each subsequent release, we're just going to add more rules to that engine. But hopefully what this provides for you is validation of that data as you load your staging tables. So if there are any obvious issues that need to be resolved, you can do that prior to running the rest of the migration. You don't have to go all the way to the end to find out that you had an issue at the beginning. So hopefully this will, it provides a faster feedback loop, gives you the opportunity to correct that data. And then hopefully we'll make the rest of the migration flow a lot more smoothly, and you'll get better results the first time you actually produce a submission file and start doing comparison work.
Johnny,
do we have any
I think
other
Drew has a
questions?
question.
Yeah.
Drew, you have your hand up.
Yes, sir. I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Just flagging for Rhea.
That'll mute button. All right. So in CDS we have demographics of 2 more races coming in, and the most newest release that they're going to push out soon. Does that go ahead and encompass this when we're loading information in to the staging tables, or no? So before it was just races, everything but Hispanic, and now we're going to have everything but Hispanic, and then another option, multiple races within CDS. And with migrating that information into Generate, into the staging environment, does that fit the model of CDS?
Well, we've always handled the 2 or more races, right? If that's what,
Okay.
to make sure that I'm understanding your question. If I'm not, please let me know.
No, go ahead.
We've always handled the 2 or more races in the race data, but basically the way the race table is constructed currently in staging is you can load however many race records you have for a particular student. Like if they were at one school and they were reported with a race, and they were at a second school and reported with a race, and a third school and reported with a race, you would load all of those and that all of that data flows through Generate. If you have the determination that that student should be defined as 2 or more races and you load it that way, it would flow through Generate that way as well. So, I mean, we've always handled 2 or more races, and I apologize if the description up there was wrong. That is not the 2 or more races for Generate. It means if you had multiple race records coming in from the source, like, you know, from different schools or something like that.
That makes
That-
more sense.
Did that answer your
Yeah,
question? Sorry.
It completely. Once you said different organizations, it just made complete sense. I
Okay.
was a little lost because in CDS it handles person demographics
Yes.
as just person and then race. It doesn't handle organization with it, so that's why I got a little lost. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion.
I'd just like to add a couple other small details to that. It also was if you had one student within one school, it was identified with as white and then maybe Alaskan Native. It would load 2 records for that one student in that school into the fact table, one for each of those races. But now there's, for these specific file specs, it combines those together and turns those 2 records into 2 or more races.
Thanks, Nathan. I think Lisa, you have your hand up.
That's what I was wanting, was further
Okay.
clarification on what does the handling of multiple race records end up doing? So if you see different races, you just change it to 2 or more races.
Exactly, because the file spec really only allows you to select one. One of those options is 2 or more races. So if you provide more than one race for one student at one school, it's automatically translated to 2 or more races.
What if there's in different LEAs, one, you know, white in one LEA, Islander in another LEA at the state? Are you changing that to 2 or more races?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how that's rolled up. I think we would have, I know we handle that, but I'm not sure exactly what the logic is. Well, we'd have to go and investigate, I think. But we can get back to you on that.
Okay.
When we, excuse me, release the Q&A, we'll be able to address that. It'll be posted with the recording for the office hours.
So does anybody else have any questions before we move to the 5.3 release? Okay, so briefly for 5.3, we're going to have obviously any bug fixes that we encounter, code enhancements that we've got planned. The year-to-year child count report in the reports library is going to be finished and available. I think we released, and I apologize, but like the discipline and exiting was in the previous release, so this is going to be the child count report. And then we're also going to be automating our end-to-end tests. So this is not something that's going to be rolled out to the state, but this is internal to us. But it is important because as we work on a file specification, we create an end-to-end test for that file specification, which actually tests, like as we load our staging data in, our test data, and then we run the migration, it compares what's in staging to what ended up in the final report with the same set of rules that the report used for aggregation, so that we can compare those values and determine if there's any issues in the migration, right? So we've got all these end-to-end tests, and we currently have to run them manually. So we're going to automate that, so it's going to run automatically with, we haven't determined a schedule, but it may run every night. It may run with every time we push new code. We're not sure about that yet, but we're going to automate those tests, which means we're going to have the results of every single test every time we make a code change. So our regression testing should get a lot better. We should be able to find any, I think one of the things that we had mentioned, one of the issues we had mentioned previously, or that was mentioned previously, was, you know, a release that's targeting a certain set of file specifications, but one of those changes, you know, accidentally affects a file specification that's due at some other time of the year. and you don't find out until later when you start working on that file or something like that. So this is going to help us, address those issues. And then, like I mentioned, with the new staging validation process, we're going to be adding more rules. We're going to continually add rules, keep adding rules for file specifications as they come up, plus basic rules that are going to help us. And then also we've got a new tool that's going to come out in 5.3. We've got an automated submission file comparison process. So currently, because I work with some of the states that are on, and you've had to suffer through this with me, but we do SQL comparisons of our report table against your submission file. And they give us a really good idea of like where we are, and we match those down. But the one thing it doesn't do is like it doesn't match on zero counts. It doesn't do an actual submission file to submission file comparison, right? We're just looking at the actual aggregated numbers. This process is actually going to compare the submission file that you have from your legacy process against a submission file created from Generate. So we're talking about zero counts, everything, all the correct permitted values, all of that. So and it automates the process, right? So all you have to do is have the two files and then just run this process. It will upload the two files into Generate, put them in tables, run the comparison for you, and put the results in a result set table so that you can then do your evaluation. So we're hoping this also helps. The staging validation at the beginning will help you, make sure that you've got your data loaded appropriately. And then when you run it all the way to the report, you can run the file submission comparison process, which will help you start validating those numbers. That's a preview of 5.3. Does anybody have any questions about that? Lisa, at least I see that your hand's up.
Of course I do, Johnny. On the automated submission file comparison, I appreciate the idea there. Our goal is to not have to create a submission file through the legacy system anymore. So is this just as you're getting started for your initial year kind of thing? I mean, because if we're going to continue to do our legacy process to produce a submission file, why do we need to do it in Generate?
And no, you are right. I apologize. I should have described that better. This is going to be more for either new states to generate, or like you, more mature states that are taking on a new file. Right? If you're taking on a new file that you haven't worked on previously, you're going to run it in your legacy process because you're going to want to validate the Generate process as well. So it's not going to be for something that's established. The things that you've produced for, a few years now, no, this is not really beneficial to you for those files. But like in, for us specifically there in Kentucky, like we were working on 141 and 116 and some of those files, this would have been good there. This would have been useful there, but this is not useful for a state that's more mature, that's already done those, that's moving away from that legacy process.
Okay, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question.
Rhea has her hand up too.
I'm talkative today. I'm sorry, guys. So Colorado reported we still have outstanding issues when it comes to grades offered and child count. Is that going to get addressed on the next release?
I think the issue. Yeah, the issue I think we're talking about, if we're talking about the same thing, let me know.
Yeah.
Is the AUs versus the LEAs?
Yes, and there in child count, there are some schools that PK only that has 0 counts that's being included in FS002.
That ticket is actually in the 5.3, isn't, because we actually went through setting up the tickets for 5.3. That's actually in the 5.3 release list of things that we're going to work on. Yes. So that will be in 5.3.
All right, that's great news. And about the grades offered, some of the with the no grades issue, and some of the could not remember. I think it was AU that's being that doesn't have a count, but it's like indicated as ungraded. UG.
Yeah, the ungraded issue, we have a ticket for that as well, and that's also in the 5.3 release. We're looking at how we're handling that and making sure that matches the file specification. So yes, both of those tickets are going to be in the 5.3 release.
And including that as the no grades, because we have.
Yeah, the
what
no
the other-
grades one and the PK only schools
Ye-
being
yes.
included in the 002 zero counts. Wow, that was a long one. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
And Johnny,
Okay,
it looks like we have one hand up. Sorry, Liz. I just wanted to, since questions are going to maybe keep going, I wanted to point out the evaluation link survey. If you're hopping off, please find that survey link in the chat. But otherwise, sorry to interrupt, Liz.
No, you're fine. So Lisa, this is our next slide. So as you all know, 5.2 was released in December. We're planning releasing 5.3 mid-February. And then we are still discussing in terms of the changes to the submission dates, when the next release will be coming after 5.3. But we will keep you all posted once we've made decisions. If you have feedback on it, it would be great to include in the survey. We just have a few minutes left. Any other questions before we kick it over to the survey slide? Drew?
Yeah. So I have two questions, kind of lengthy questions. First is releasing Generate to the CDS Git repo or a new repo. Any plans in future releases to do so?
Yes, so we do have plans to do that. We're still figuring out timeline and what that looks like and how to roll it out specifically. But once we have more of a plan and how it looks and what that looks like and dates, we will let you all know as soon as possible.
Awesome. And the FX comparison tool sounds amazing. I started looking at documentation already, and there's a bulk insert portion of that, which I don't believe is going to work well for us in the state of Vermont. And if there was a script built to go ahead and load the FX files to Generate using Python, would be very useful. I don't know how realistic that is, but gonna throw that out there.
I appreciate that. We know bulk insert is one that, like, in some states is not going to be available. So currently you would just manually load the files and then the rest of the process is automated. But we're also looking at, in a future version of Generate, having a file upload process from the UI. So actually
that'd be
including in
awesome.
the UI that would give you the ability to upload files from there. But that's going to be a little bit bigger change. That's going to be in a future release. So currently, if bulk insert is not available to you, if it's not in your particular installation, then you just have to manually upload the two files. But yeah, but the rest of the process you can run as an automated process.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Lisa?
And thank you for the suggestion.
Reyes had her hand up longer than me.
Okay.
Her arm's getting tired.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to unhand it. Okay. Sorry, guys.
She's doing plyometrics.
There you go.
My question was very simple. If you go back a slide, please. Will you be changing, well, sorry, 2 slides back. Instead of the due dates of file specs, will you be changing this to the opening date of when you're trying to time releases? Because we've now got, a 2-month window where we're supposed to be running all these error checks and the files are supposed to be perfect by the due date with all the error validations run. That the new stuff is, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but the new error checks that we have to run first, we can't submit a file on the due date. It's got to have time to go through all those review processes before that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because Liz, you may want to jump in as well. I was just going to say this was just meant as a marker, not necessarily when it's going to be released. To say the EDFACS files that are due in January, February, that's not necessarily meaning we're going to release it at that time. It's just a marker to say this is a release that targets that set of files. And like the 5.3 release is targeting the files that are going to be due in June. And that's why, like, the 5.3 release is coming out in February and those files aren't due until June. for exactly what you mentioned, right? Because we have to give you enough time to be able to install that update, start running your files, and then have time to do all of that data validation work that's part of the modernization effort. So yeah, even though it says due in, that's just meant to be a marker so you know what that release is targeted to affect.
Okay.
And Darla, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Darla Vaughn, State of New Hampshire. We're a newer Generate user. We are currently in test, and while promoting to our production environment, we learned that the Generate and Generate background web configurations need to be at the root level. And we were asking that this be changed so we can standardize it into our other web-like applications. And I'm wondering if there's any work being done on this to for future releases.
Yeah, so Darla, it's funny now that you're saying that. I remember Nathan sent us an email last week or whatnot. So I have this flagged. We know that it's an issue for you all. We will be working towards getting it into the JIRA backlog and planning it into a future release. I don't have a specific date for you right now, but it's definitely on our radar.
Okay, because it requires us, you know, to work around with DNS and
Yeah.
other workarounds. It requires us to get certificates and make changes. So, you know, just being able to not have it at the root level would be really, really helpful.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that feedback.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Satish, I think.
Yes, Johnny, so what are the things we need to consider for the upgrade? So do we need to take any precautions, you know, so any? So you
For
said
5.2,
uh-huh.
sorry, there's some echo. I sound abnormal, not twice as bad. So for 5.2, there is normally for a release, there's no pre-work or anything you have to do, but for 5.2 there is, and it's in the release notes. We're upgrading, and it was mentioned, I think at the beginning, but we're upgrading .NET from 3.1 to 6. So you'll need to do that prior to applying the 5.2 update. And then with that change, there's also one additional change to the app settings files. To the connection strings. There's an additional parameter that gets added to the connection strings that's also identified in the release notes. So you'll need to do those two changes prior to applying the 5.2 update.
Thank you.
That answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, we are 4 minutes over. I want to be respectful of all of your time. If you have any other questions that haven't been answered today, feel free to email Johnny and I. We can, like Dan said, in the notes that come out with the recording, we can include anything in there if you have specific questions that have not been answered today. We appreciate you all joining. I think it was a good conversation, and like we mentioned a minute ago, if you have time, please fill out the survey. We use that to really edit these sessions to all of your needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Johnny. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thanks, Johnny. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.